All right. So good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome each and every one of you to day 3 of the Harmony Seminar organized by the Department of Interreligious Studies, Ncdhr, Mumbai. I want to just start off by saying that we've had wonderful 2 days filled with really insightful discussions. And we are so happy to have many of you returning as well. We'd like to start off the day by introducing the student team that we have, who have produced a wonderful film named Aawaz. If I could invite the student team to turn on their videos and show their lovely faces so that we can introduce them. Aawaz is a film produced by the students of the St. Davis College. We have Shruti Swaminathan and Natasha Dedhia with us today. The film is also produced by Rutwik, Raote and Reena Dias. We also have a lovely poem also written by another student, Ahaan Vaidya. This film aims to chronicle the stories of various service providers in society who did not have the chance to stay at home and work from home like many of us did because of the nature of their occupation. These are people whose service and occupation is entirely fundamental to the way society functions. And during the lockdown, their service helped keep society moving forward and met the very basic needs of all of us. So without further ado, I'd like to screen the film. So yes, we'll just go ahead with that.
घर की चौखट पर खड़ा यक्ष प्रश्न बार बार पुचकारता है। इंसान में छिपी इंसानियत को वह जोर जोर से ललकारता है। घड़ी मुश्किल की अहम चुनौती सुइयां वक्त की विवशता से पुकारती हैं। नई रणभूमि नया युद्ध है, नए वीरों को यह बुलाती है।
लॉकडाऊन ज्या वेळेला सुरुवात झाली मागच्या वर्षी मार्च महिन्यामध्ये, त्यावेळेला स्टार्टिंगला 1-2 वेळा पोलिसांकडून श्रीप्रसाद मिळाला. त्याच्यानंतर मग गाडीवरती स्टिकर्स वगैरे लावून व्यवस्थित जाताना ते चेक करून मग त्यावेळेला ते आम्हाला सोडत होते. आणि त्याच्यानंतर माणसांनी ते दिलेल्या एक ठराविक वेळेमध्ये तेवढ्या वेळेतच आम्हाला ते दुधाचं काम करून ते आमचं काम आटपून आम्हाला आमच्या घरी परतावं लागत होतं. ते ट्रॅव्हल आमच्या शेडकडे म्हणजे जे व्हेकल्स आहे मिल्क व्हॅन, त्या मिल्क व्हॅनमधनं मग आम्ही सकाळी मिल्क घेऊन निघालो की मग नंतर आम्ही 2-4 मुलं सोबत म्हणजे ती मिल्क व्हॅनमधनं दूध कस्टमरांच्या घरी आमच्या ठराविक ठिकाणी म्हणजे जिथे आमचं मिल्क सप्लायचं आहे त्या ठिकाणी जाऊन ते टेस्टिंग मशीनवरती टेस्टिंग करून सॅनिटायझर वगैरे करून मग आम्ही कस्टमरांच्या घरी मिल्क सप्लाय त्यांच्या डोअरपर्यंत दिलेली आहे सर्व्हिस. सेफ्टीसाठी त्या काळामध्ये आम्ही मास्क तर आहेच, परत फेस शिल्ड वापरली, त्याच्यानंतर हँड ग्लोव्ज होते आमच्याकडे आणि सॅनिटायझर तर कंपल्सरी आमच्याकडे असायचंच. मग त्या अनुषंगाने आम्ही कस्टमरला देताना आम्ही हँड ग्लोव्ज घातलेले असायचे. सकाळी निघताना आम्ही दूध टाकताना हँड ग्लोव्ज घातले की ते सॅनिटाईज करून मगच दुधाच्या बॅगांना हात लावून दूध घेऊन मग आम्ही कस्टमरांच्या घरी सप्लाय केलेलं आहे.
सिक्योरिटी का काम होता है सिक्योर करना। सिक्योर का मतलब ये हुआ जो पहले स्वयं की रक्षा। तो हम लोग स्वयं का रक्षा करते हुए हम लोग इस सोसाइटी में सामने जितने भी मेंबर थे हम लोग उसका सही ढंग से रक्षा किए। कभी स्थिति ऐसा भी आ गया है हमारे विंग में भी बीच बीच में 1-2 पेशेंट निकल गया तो जान पे खेल करके उसका मेडिसिन उसके घर तक जो है रिसीव डिलीवरी करना या मिल्क देना या सैनिटाइजर करना, ये सब हम लोग जो है उनके घर पे जा कर के बार बार करते थे। किसी को बाहर जाने की स्थिति पैदा होता था तो हम लोग सही ढंग से उसका टेम्परेचर करते थे। जब एंट्री करता था गाड़ी, इंट्रेंस करता था, उस पीरियड में भी हम लोग ड्राइवर हो या उसके साथ में जो परिवार का सदस्य जितना है सबको हम लोग सैनिटाइज करता था। यहाँ पे जितने भी सदस्य यहाँ पे काम कर रहा था उन्हें किसी भी प्रकार का तनाव नहीं हुआ क्योंकि सोसाइटी ने हम लोगों के लिए अतिरिक्त व्यवस्था किया था। हम लोगों को क्या चाहिए, क्या नहीं चाहिए, क्या करना है और क्या नहीं करना है, इसकी जानकारी हम लोगों को सेक्रेटरी साहब बीच बीच में इन्फॉर्म करते रहता था। अगर इस बीच में हमारे घर में किसी भी प्रकार का परेशानी होता था, जो तकलीफ था हम लोग को जो पूरा नहीं कर सकते थे यहाँ रह करके, उस समय जा करके राशन भरवा देना या पैसा दे देना या मेडिसिन का जरूरत पड़ता था वो दे देना। तो ये हमारे जो है इंटरनल रिलेशन में हमारे मिशन सिक्योरिटी के जो सदस्य थे वो लोग भी हम लोग को हेल्प किया। तो हम लोग सही ढंग से काम किया, ये समझ के काम किया कि किसी का भी जान हो, चाहे छोटा आदमी हो या बड़ा आदमी हो, जान जो होता है ये बहुत ही अनमोल चीज़ होता है जिसका कीमत नहीं है। तो हम लोग ड्यूटी तो कर रहे थे, एक ये पेशा है हम लोग का, इसके लिए ड्यूटी करते थे, लेकिन एक मानवता के आधार पे हम लोग सीने पे पत्थर रख करके यहाँ 3 महीना ये सोसाइटी में हम लोग सब आदमी तन मन धन से अपना पूरा सहयोग दिया।
I thought that as being a responsible shopkeeper, I thought it would be good to serve people and at least serve with their daily needs. Of course, there was a risk, but I took all the precautionary measures that I can and everything was fine. Yes, that could have happened, but as this was the first time the world was dealing through this kind of situation, but I don't know what could have been made better. In the initial days of the lockdown, the whole store was empty. All the distributors were closed. All the companies were closed. So if there was, if they knew, then the storekeepers would have been stocked well, and in turn, it would not be a mess which happened in the earlier days, that people were running around everywhere to get the food stuff. I personally had to go myself in my car to the distributor's place, and there was a lot of queue, like some place I had been to get Maggie for customers, biscuits for the customers. I had been standing for 3 to 4 hours queue in the morning just to get my turn to get the stuff. I have already seen so many stores which have closed in past 1 year. A consumer thinks that he doesn't have to go at separate places to get all the different kind of stuff. So what the consumer thinks is it is best to order online rather than going in the market and searching for all the different stuff and risking themselves. So it is very natural that the storekeepers, small storekeepers who have limited stuff, they are facing a lot of trouble to run their business. They are not able to survive, and many have closed down. I think that it's been a difficult year for everyone, from the rich to the poor. Everyone has faced a lot of difficulties in this 1 year. When there was lockdown, in the first few months, the people were rejoicing. They were spending a lot of money on food. But now it's almost a year, and people have come to know now that whichever business they are or whichever job they are, it has taken a hit and it is affecting them. Now I think people are spending a little bit wisely. So business is less now, and I think it has affected. From past 1 year, the business has been down because of this lockdown and all.
Obviously, the first thing that we did is when we were coming in to the home, we would call, 2-3 minutes earlier than reaching home and tell them to keep the door open. And then once they keep the door open, we would just go straight away, leave the footwear into a bag outside and then walk straight into the bathroom. So we had sanitizer bottles in the bathroom. So first we would, wash our hands. Directly we would take a wash. So we would have a complete bath and then put the clothes directly into detergent and with some Dettol in it. So leave it soaked for some time and then wash it and then come out of the bathroom. So, we were completely sanitizing ourselves. And this went on, it's still going on even till now because I still have elderly people at home. So, and in spite of vaccine, they can still get infected to some extent. That was tough because, you can't breathe inside it literally. For the first time you wear it, you're like sweating it out inside. It gradually is, and then also the claustrophobic feeling. So that is very, very difficult. Then once you have that and the mask on, you kind of fog up, especially if you have spectacles, everything fogs up. So that the vision becomes difficult. Then you need to be tactile also because as doctors, we need to, examine the patient. We need to put lines in them. We put IV lines, we put central lines. So for all that, you have to be tactile. So yeah, it was a huge learning curve. Even donning and doffing it, the procedure is called donning and doffing the PPE. It's an entire procedure. So there are charts put up in the area where we change and we follow that step by step. So that, while we are doffing, which is taking it off, we don't infect the surroundings. So there is a stepwise method of how you remove it. You can't just pull it off like that. So there's a stepwise way on how you remove one by one, you remove the PPE and all that. So yeah, so it was a huge learning thing. A lot of depression and anxiety in my team members, which was obvious because our nurses are mostly from Kerala. And they actually come from Kerala, finish their basic education, then they are here for 2-3 years. And then many of them do either move abroad or whatever. So in that period, they are not with their relatives. And then relatives are back in Kerala or in the south, and they are going on calling all the department heads saying that send my daughter back, send my son back or whatever. And because they are obviously worried, they are working in a hospital and it's very worrying. So we had a lot of cases like that who wanted to go back. Then we had to motivate them because if all of them went, you can't manage patients, right? So I am sure this was happening all over the world and also especially many Indian units. that people, doctors and nurses wanted to take breaks because they were depressed. This whole cleaning and, donning and doffing every day and going home and carrying the risk of getting your parents infected. And, so there were people who felt this was not worth it. Let me just sit at home. So then we had to motivate all these people that, it's for the larger good, and, you have to do these things, and nothing will happen. We'll take care of you. So we did have a lot of doctors who got infected. We had nurses who got infected. We had to quarantine them within the hospital, but we looked after them within the hospital. So, people were going through that emotional crisis also, which was hard for lay people to see. They don't see that aspect of what a doctor or a nurse is going through. Yeah.
नहीं, ऐसा तो डर तो इतना नहीं लगा, लेकिन कॉलेज में जैसा फादर लोग बोला, जे कमल ये सब काम करने पड़ेगा, ये सुपरवाइजर करने पड़ेगा, और ये कोविड सेंटर होएगा, जो भी है बोला इससे मिलने का, जो इंचार्ज है उन लोग से जो जैसा जैसा बोलेगा ऐसा ऐसा कराने का, और वो सब तो हुआ। उसका बाद थोड़ा जब भी कोविड टेस्ट करने के लिए आया था, वो तो सब हो गया। जब भी कोविड टेस्ट करने के लिए आया था, इतना डर नहीं लगा। जब भी सबका हो रहा था, हमारा भी करना चाहिए, इसके लिए वो सोच के हम लोग भी गया, हम लोग का भी टेस्ट हुआ। इतना डर नहीं लगा। खाली ये क्या, ये अगर पॉजिटिव आएगा तो क्या होएगा, ऐसा थोड़ा मन में ये हुआ, और कुछ नहीं हुआ। नहीं, अभी जो ऐसा मन में ऐसा नहीं। अभी बीमार तो ऐसा अचानक ये हुआ, फादर लोग भी हॉस्पिटल में गए, जो होएगा होएगा, अभी काम तो करना पड़ेगा। हमारा इधर कोई नहीं है, मैं घर, वाइफ है, बच्चा है, मैं है, इसके लिए वाइफ से और बच्चा से दूर थोड़ा रह गया, और फादर लोग जो बोला वही काम करते गए। लेकिन हल्का सा थोड़ा ऐसा मैसेज, क्या होएगा पता नहीं, हमारा इधर कोई नहीं है, क्या होएगा, फादर लोग है, जो होएगा फादर लोग देख लेगा, ये सोच के मैं चला, ये सब काम करते गया, और कुछ नहीं। अच्छा। इतना तो डर नहीं लगा, लेकिन जब भी ज्यादा बांटते गया तभी थोड़ा हल्का सा ऐसा लगा, सर किधर जाने का, क्या होएगा, इसके लिए किधर जाऊं, पढ़ा लिखा नहीं है मैं, किधर बच्चा को वाइफ को लेके जाऊं, ऐसा मन में थोड़ा ये होते गया। नहीं, थकावट बोले तो इधर औरत बच्चा है, बाहर से सब्जी फब्जी लाने का, जो भी है राशन फैशन लाने का, वो सब लाने का, तो इधर काम भी चालू करता था, और थोड़ा जाके टाइम मिला तो जाके लेके आके ये सब काम करता था। ऐसा ऐसा तो क्यों, एकदम ये मेरे को तो करना ही पड़ेगा, मैं ठान लिया। अभी देखो, इतना आदमी नहीं, इतना स्टाफ नहीं था, सब काम मैं किया। ऐसा कैसा भी करके 7 महीना निकल लिया, कैसा भी करके। उसके बाद स्टाफ अब आ गया, अभी ठीक है, अभी थोड़ा हल्का फुल्का काम है, इतना प्रेशर वाला काम नहीं करते हैं, लेकिन काम करते हैं, जो फादर लोग बोलते हैं वही करते हैं।
कौन सा शब्द बयां करेगा वह शुक्रिया, जिससे कुछ दूर हुए दुख। अवसाद हैं, देवदूत हैं, संकट मोचक हैं, अनहपूर्वक धन्यवाद है।
Before we move on to the panel for today, I would just once again like to thank the students who produced this film: Shruti Swaminathan, Reena Dias, Rutwik, Raote, Natasha, Dedhia, and Ahaan Vaidya. It was a wonderful film, and I hope all of you will watch it. We will also be sharing the link to this film, which is uploaded on our channel. Now we move on to the panel for today. Sai. All right. So fine. So I'll just move on. We have with us Professor Kishu Daswani, who will be moderating today's panel. I'll hand it over to him, Professor Kishu.
Good evening, everyone. That was really a lovely film, I'd say. It was ordinary people in extraordinary times. And I think it was put up so beautifully, wherein each one of them took that little effort to make our life that much more normal, that much more harmonious. I think it was a lovely film. I'm sure everybody here would agree with that. And today, to culminate this 3-day program, we have got certain very, very extraordinary speakers with us, highly talented speakers who have made an immense contribution to society. And we're going to talk to them about what has motivated them. What are the obstacles they've had to face on their personal front? What are the obstacles they've had to face through institutions and society? And how, despite this, they've gone ahead and be the harbingers of positive change. So without wasting too much time, I'm going to introduce all the 4 speakers to you. I am not putting out an order of how you would like to speak. I would give the speakers a chance to decide who would like to go first, but I will introduce them in a given order. And to start with, the first person I'm going to introduce is Mr. Sanjay Hazarika. He's an international director of the Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative, that's a CHRI. Before that, he was the founder director of the Center for Northeast Studies and Policy Research at the Jamia Millia Ismailia, where he has held the Saifuddin Kichliu Chair. His book, Strangers No More, New Narratives from India's Northeast, is described as the most comprehensive book yet available about the Northeast. He's a very creative person. He's made a dozen documentaries, and he was also the consulting editor of The Statesman and the Sunday Guardian. He's a member of the NITI Forum for Northeast and the former member of the committee to review the AFSPA, that's the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, and the ICSSR, that's Indian Council of Social Science Research. We would really like to hear from him about his experiences and the narratives that he can tell us from the Northeast. The next speaker we have is Miss Cynthia Stephen. She's an activist, a writer, a poet, a social policy researcher, and an independent journalist. She works in areas of Dalit studies, affirmative action, and development policy. Being the founder of the Training, Editorial, and Development Services Trust, that is known as the TEDS, she currently resides in Bangalore. She has written many articles and contributed chapters for books on issues of Dalit women, Brahminical patriarchy, caste discrimination, girl-child issues, and womanism. She has shared theological perspectives in the Indian context, including on gender, minority identity, the Indian nation, this has been written in national and international journals, including the Journal of Dharma and Religion. A very articulate speaker, especially on marginalized issues. We would like to hear from Cynthia on women's empowerment and gender issues. The third speaker for today is Mr. Naveen Gautam. He's from Lucknow, and he belongs to a Dalit family. He completed his graduation in law from the National Law University, Lucknow, and his post-graduation in international human rights from NLU, Bangalore. He works as an advocate with the Human Rights Law Network in Delhi, and later he has joined the Center for Social Justice. He's working in Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, and West Bengal on the rights of Dalits and Adivasis. Currently, Naveen is working on the national program as the national program coordinator with the National Campaign on Dalit Human Rights, that's NCDHR. The fourth speaker for today is Mr. Ramit Singh Chimni. He's an advocate for farmers' rights, and he's the founder of the Rasich Group and co-founded 8 Goals 1 Foundation, that's called the 8-1 Foundation, which has redefined development for business and society respectively. Over the years, Ramit has been invited to share his thoughts at various national and international forums, including Harvard and the Law Council of Australia. He's a recipient of the iconic Leader Creating a Better World for All award by the WEF, that is the Women's Forum. At present, Ramit serves as a jury member of the International UNESCO Jose Marti Prize, which is, amongst others, has also awarded the prize to the Venezuelan President, His Excellency Hugo Chavez. He's credited with drafting the bill circulated by the Ministry of Law and Justice for liberalization of the Indian legal profession. And personally, I would really like to hear a bit more about that. But more importantly, we would like to hear from Ramit about corporate sector and social harmony. The floor is open to our speakers. It's a difficult choice. Ramit, you'd like to go first?
No, I was actually inviting Sanjoy to go first because I've heard a lot of his talks over the years, and doing a lot of work in Northeast myself, I've always been influenced by some of the things that he's been talking about. So Sanjoy, if you could please do us the honor of starting us off.
Super. We take your endorsement. Sanjoy goes first. I would request all the participants to keep their audios off, and also the questions that you have, please put them up on chat. We will selectively take them and ask it to the speakers at the end. The speakers would have about 12 to 15 minutes of an initial parlay before we get into questioning. Sanjay.
Okay, thanks to the co-moderator for pushing me into the hot seat, as it were. But I'm I'm not at home. I've come to Shillong, which is my family home, so that's why you see a bit of chaos around me. But it's far better than being in Delhi, both the heat, the toxicity of all kinds, and everything else. And it's just rained today, so it's wonderful. I'd just like to share three experiences which actually molded the work that I do and drive the priorities that I place, And these are very personal experience. The first was in 1983. I was then a reporter for the New York Times for South Asia. And it was the time of the Assam elections of 83. And there was a storm coming, a cataclysmic wind, hatred and violence and bloodshed. And I happened to be in Guwahati when the news of the Nelly massacre broke, and we drove there early the next morning, and to see fields full of dead bodies is, it's a fitri transformed. It's not people in a mortuary or in a riot. This was a massive violent incident which carried off some 1,500 people in one go in the middle of an election. And my daughter had not been born. So it was at that time, because I saw families completely laid out, parents, children. And I said that whatever one does, in whatever small way one does, one should try and prevent these things from happening, reduce the hatred. So that partly drives the efforts I make for reaching out, reconciliation, and so on. Because after all, we're not just citizens, we're human beings first, before we are citizens of a country or members of faith or a particular group. The second thing was the Bhopal disaster. And there you saw what, I know that Ramit Singh comes from a business background, but what business can do, a corporate power can do, if it is not within boundaries. And you had 2,000 people killed for no fault of their own. There was no great riot. There was nothing. There was a leak from a gas plant, which was shut down and was badly maintained. So the need for the governments to ensure that standards are maintained, the need for civil society and lawyers particularly to ensure that standards are maintained, and for public knowledge to be, shall we say, even extravagantly shared about the risks that people live in, the conditions in which they live. The right to information, I think, is very critical in situations like this and in the current pandemic. The third is an experience I had with, when I was making a film on the Brahmaputra with the filmmaker Jahanu Barua. We had traveled, we'd done the Tibet and Assam, Arunachal, Assam, and in Bangladesh also. In Assam, there was one point at which many of you will have heard of the island Majuli, which is in the heart of the river, the greatest river island in the world. We were on a ferry. There were no bridges at that time, in that area. And we were on a ferry, and we heard the story of this young woman who had died while crossing the river in the same ferry, coming towards the mainland, because she was pregnant and about to give birth, but she couldn't make it. And when we got to know the details of the story, it became even more poignant and tragic and powerful, which was that this is a young woman in her teens who had a complicated pregnancy. She was carried from her home by a stretcher to the ferry ghat, but they missed the ferry because they got there late. They had to spend the night by the Brahmaputra, and the Brahmaputra at any time is a powerful entity, and in winter it is cold, damp, and for that frightened family it must have been terrible. They caught the ferry the next morning, but it was too late for her and for the unborn child. So to me, that was something that was a shocker. And I did some research and found that Assam had the worst maternal mortality ratio in the country. More women died at the time of childbirth than at any other point. If you're young, you're pregnant, you're in a rural area, you have a risk of dying. The death rate was, mortality rate is 493 out of 1 lakh, which is worse than UP, Madhya Pradesh, and any of the so-called Bimaru states. And so was child mortality. And I felt that was something that I needed to do. What can you do? I'm just a journalist. I'm just a writer. I'm not a great activist or anything at that time. I'm still not. And the thought came that, well, why should she have come for the service? The service should go to her. And that's when I thought of a boat clinic. They had to take healthcare to people on islands. And then I did some more research, and I found that 1/10 of the population of Assam. Assam is a small state, about 35 million people, 3.5 crores, out of which 1/10 live on islands. There are 2,500 islands. They don't have the kind of healthcare that you'd find on the mainland. Many of them don't have any places like that at all. So I designed these boat clinics. I started with one in one district. Now, in partnership with the National Health Mission, we have 15 of these. 9 of them are our own boats, and we reach about 3 lakh people with healthcare, with a focus on women and children. So to me, that, and then of course, I came to CHRI and have been doing other work related to issues of rights. But to me, these are the 3 issues, the 3 events that have shaped my approach to the way one has worked over the years. I'll just stop there because ultimately we are storytellers. We tell the stories that interest people, that perhaps move them, and perhaps to some degree can inspire them. Stop here. Thank you.
Sanjay, I'm sure a lot of questions would come up. You have beautifully summarized how an individual tragedy, a communal tragedy, and an industrial tragedy, 3 of them totally unconnected in a manner of speaking, but really drove you into your passion for your work today. Thank you. I'll just wait for some questions to come up on the chat. Naveen, Ramit, who would like to go next?
Ramit, maybe, yeah.
No, go for it, Naveen, please.
Okay, thank you, Professor Kishu. And so things like, I just received a mail from St. Xavier's, the department itself. And this is something which also motivated me. I just said yes, because I've been tested positive with COVID lately. And I didn't have time, but I wanted to have this opportunity. But then when I realized that there are big names in the panel, and I'm still a mature guy. I'm still learning. It's just been 3 years into the field. This is something which motivates me in one manner. And then going back to my life incidents, because the first time when actually Mr. Sanjay was talking about the incident, I was not even born. So that shows how much experience he carries. And I've also been following Cynthia ji and Ramit. So that's also something which keeps motivating me. So basically, I'll go back to my own family background. I'm basically from Dalit family. And so we are Chamars, basically. And still in our villages, once I've seen that my mother was not allowed to fetch the water. I didn't actually understand what's happening because I was around 7 to 8 years. I was in the village at that point of time. I just asked my mom, I just asked my dad, what's happening? They said nothing. We'll just get water from some other place. Don't worry. So at the age of 15, I just realized that my mother was very ill at that point of time, and she was not able to work. So we were looking for some domestic helper. We didn't get any for like good 2 months, and my mother was still bedridden. And after a month, we just realized the reason was our caste itself. That point of time, also, I asked my father the same question: Dad, what's going on? What is this? He's like, don't worry, child, you'll learn things at the correct moment when it actually comes. And then things started coming up when I actually went to the school, the high school. In the high school, first time I took scheduled caste in my high school form, basically. And I just asked my teacher, what is this column all about? And then she's like, she was an English teacher, imagine. She was an English teacher, and she's telling me, "Arey beta chamar ho to tum yahi pe tick karoge." So I didn't really understand, but because teacher told me, I said, okay, fine, I'll tick it over there. And then all of a sudden, the same day I went back to my father and asked him, Dad, what is all this happening? What is chamar and what is scheduled caste? What is this? Then he told me his own story, how he used to carry a separate sack bag while he was studying in school, how he used to carry a separate bottle while he was studying in school, how he was supposed to be sit behind, separate from all the students and the group itself. And slowly I started understanding the whole structure of the village. And then I realized my house, my ancestor house in village, was 1.5 kilometers away from the main basti. And this is how the Dalits are separated. Thirdly, graduation, when I started realizing that, okay, fine, there are certain issues and there is something like Dalit vulnerability, Dalit marginalization exists. I started studying, and then my professor helped me, actually, Professor Sanjay Singh. He's a professor in National School, Lucknow. And he started making me realize deliberately that क्या दलित होके तुम कुछ नहीं कर पा रहे हो, क्या करोगे तुम society के लिए, what's happening, why not working hard. So slowly and slowly, I moved to the next ladder. And in post-graduation, I was actually, some people humiliated me because I came there through reservation. And I scored well in the class, basically, in my batch itself. And but same thing which I faced, humiliation. And it's like, Arey, iska to reserve category hai. He doesn't need to worry. He'll qualify for anything. How does it matter? He's a Dalit. I personally didn't face that much of discrimination, I'll tell you. But then I just moved to Punjab. And that was something which is a life-changing event for me. So in Punjab, I worked on bonded labors over there. And personally, I started looking at the situation of how they're living and what condition they are living. And then, the data itself says that around 92% bonded labor belong to either scheduled caste or scheduled tribe category. I was like, that's impossible because how first thing is how do they have the data, exact data. Second thing is there might be other caste, other communities, people working over there. I went to Punjab, and that was something which made me realize, yes, the data is correct. Past 30 days, I realized that whosoever I met, whichever bonded labor I met, whosoever I rescued, he was a Dalit. And that's something which made me to think again. And then I decided to move into this sector. And while working in Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, and Jharkhand, I started looking at the socio-economic and cultural aspect of the Dalit rights when we talk about. Because whenever we talk about Dalit, we talk about atrocities, we talk about violence, but we don't talk about the socio-economic and cultural aspects also. So while working in Madhya Pradesh and Chhattisgarh, that's something which made me realize, okay, these are also certain aspects which we need to work about and which we need to make people aware about their rights and all. And then, yeah, the last step, while I moved to Ncdhr, this is a life-changing event for me. Looking at the data, looking at the violence, looking at the atrocities and talking to the survivors itself as a lawyer and as a social activist is something which motivates me, keeps motivating me. And yeah, that's for the motivation part, which actually motivated me to work in this field. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Naveen. You know, that's a very, very interesting story of, you know, how, and I do wonder whether that discrimination that you faced at a given time did prompt you to join the legal profession, in a manner of speaking, you know, as a kind of that I need to know, I want to get there. We will come back with some questions for you once Mr. Ramit is finished with his.
Thank you, Kishu. Yeah, I know, wonderful to hear Sanjoy and Naveen, right? And I think I did end up maneuvering this so that I end up speaking at the end. So clearly, that's something that I did very deliberately because I did want to hear their motivations before I come on to mine.
Let me interrupt there. That's
yes,
what corporate lawyers do. They are the best at that. Yes.
Oh, well, that you can call it the business consultant side of me to do that, right? But I'm actually going to talk about my motivations on both sides because my roots are in what people call the social sector. I hate calling it the social sector because, in my opinion, everything that we do is for society, right? And the problem is that we've turned the corporate world as being the absolute converse of the social world, right? Which is why, and we've turned it into a judicial entity and so on and so forth to dehumanize the corporate world, right? And that's the cause of a lot of issues, in my opinion. But for the purpose of just a bit of sanity and so that everyone knows what I'm talking about, there is the social sector and then there's the business sector. When you introduced us, Kishu, I think you spoke about how what we do is extraordinary, right? You also spoke about us talking about our struggles, right? I think my motivation primarily for the social sector, if I may, comes from the absolute reverse of that, right? About the fact that how we are all ordinary, not extraordinary, right? What ends up happening, unfortunately, and I see it a lot of times, and in fact, even on the 14th with Professor Guru at the start of the Harmony seminar, when we talk about these conversations about putting people on pedestals, right, and the people who are actually working in society to say, oh, they are fighting against all odds to work for society, what we're really doing is demotivating others from doing the same thing. Now, it sounds very contradictory because you say that, oh, look, you need to have heroes for people to look up to, right? But what we must also realize is sometimes the heroes become so extraordinary that normal people like myself, right, feel that, oh, this is unattainable. I can't do what this person is doing, right? Oh, this person, look, this person has managed to make such a massive change in society, right? I can't do this. And invariably, then you will not do it. You will not walk that path, right? So my real motivation and how it came about when I was about 17 years old, when I realized that, you know, the social sector and our society is something that can be worked for and there is a change that can be made, is when I realized how easy it is. how easy making this change is if you actually see it with a straight head and with straight eyes. That's the difficult part, to be able to see it with straight eyes, right? Because there's so much around us that is trying to misdirect us in different directions. Commerce, of course, being one of the major things that does it. I would go to say that the way religion is utilized, the way politics is utilized also does the same to us, right? But if we were able to see straight, we'll realize how easy it is. And I'll give you a few examples of some of the things that I've done over the years, which every time I talk to people about it, they say that, oh, how come we've not heard of this? This sounds so amazing. It sounds extraordinary in the word that you used. And I still can't understand how it is extraordinary, because all literally what we did was go in, see what's going on, and see what we can do about it. Literally, there was really nothing else to it. 3 quick examples I'll give you, right? I started off as a 17-year-old working for farmers, as you said in your introduction. We were primarily working in the Uttar Pradesh belt, majorly Western Uttar Pradesh. The real issues over there of farmers, 2 major crops, sugarcane and paddy being 2 major crops in that area. In sugarcane, the issue was, and very quickly, that the state advised price, which was paid to the farmers, was lower than the cost of production that they had to incur in order to produce their crop, right? Now you look at that, right? It's such a simple problem. You're saying that there is a cost that I am paying to produce this crop. The money I'm receiving from you for it is lesser than that cost of production. So why should I grow the crop, right? Or how can I sustain myself? I need to take loans, and then the loans then multiply, and then the loan maafi hoti hai uske baad, and we all know what that's about, right? And so on and so forth. It's that entire cycle. So what do? You figure out, okay, so where do I go here now? So you ask the question, if the price is lower, who's setting the price, right? It's the question you ask, you get that answer, you go to that individual, sir, ma'am, why have you set the price as such? Then you get an answer in terms of what are they utilizing as their indicators. Then you figure out why are those indicators off, right? And then you move on and try and fix the origin of those indicators. Then you'll reach a place, a stumbling block, as what one may say, an obstacle or a struggle, saying that, oh, okay, now we've understood this, but we can't do anything about it. You ask the next question, who can do something about this? We don't know. And then again, Kishu, you're a lawyer, you understand, if nobody knows, then you go to the court and ask them that, sir, ma'am, who is going to be doing something about this? Because the problem has been identified. They've acknowledged what the concern is, but we don't know who's going to do something about this. So we went to court. We went all the way up to the constitution bench, right? Got an order. After that, who's going to execute it, right? These are all questions. It's simple questions that you keep asking, and you keep reaching to a place where you keep getting answers, and you keep going on as long as you keep asking those questions and doing those things, right? I'll give a completely different example. And just to put this in context, the work that we did with paddy and sugarcane farmers in the last 12 to 13 odd years or so has benefited them by over 75,000 crores, right? And that's where the extraordinary comes into play. Oh, 75,000 crores, you've managed to help them so much. No, I'm sorry, I haven't done anything. I've just asked questions. And so have the people around me asked questions, and you can do it as well. I'll give you a step-by-step of how we did it. There was nothing extraordinary about it. During this time when I was working with farmers, another thing happened which may seem to be extraordinary is I started working in near this village on the Nepal border, where, and I'm going to call them a militant group because I don't want to give them the name that politics defines them by, because I think that's demeaning. But a militant group was apparently supposed to be in control of about, not really a village, a large area of about 80,000 people, right? Where, as per the government of India, that entire set of 80,000 people were influenced by that militant group. I'll tell you the end result first, and then I'll get to how we did it. The extraordinary part, which people end up thinking, is that within a period of 9 months, that apparent militancy was completely extinguished. All those 80,000 villagers were mainstreamed. Their children started going to school. They gained control of their lands once again, and they gained control of their crop and economic activities, right? Where an Indian official had never gone into that area for decades, now you had Indian government officials going into that area and trying to figure out progress, right? Sounds extraordinary. What did we do? All we literally did was walk into that area, right? Ask people questions, what's going on here? We got answers in terms, and which basically led us to realize that it wasn't a militant group, it was a set of 10 people. 10 people who were running a quasi-government in that area, where they had their own execution center, where they had their own execution. I'm literally saying execution, right? They had their own tax laws, they had their own zamindari and all of that, like literally as good as zamindars in the old days, right? And what did we give them? To those people, all we gave were a handful of hand pumps. We gave them a set of hand pumps in the initial bit because they got clean drinking water, but the water was not something that they could be supplied because it was all controlled by the militants, right? They got water to drink. The water pumps got removed because the militants got realized, and then they removed it. We again went in, there were only 10 or 12 of them. We again went in and set up more water pumps and continued to set up water pumps for about 3 or 4 months so that to make sure that the villagers have water to drink, right? What we also did is started giving books to their kids, right? So that they can learn, and they can learn beyond what was being taught to them by this militant group, right? And within 8 or 9 months, you realize we had to do absolutely nothing. The village is 80,000 versus 10. You can imagine the delta, right? Those 80,000 were living in the fear of the 10, but the moment they realize that, yes, there is support and there is someone who is willing to help them and they can help themselves, and that person is all they're saying is that you can help yourself. Those 10 people, 6 of them went to jail, 4 of them fled to Nepal. It was literally as simple as that. There was nothing complicated beyond it, but it sounds extraordinary. And that's where you have to simplify. All of us need to do the act of simplifying, and that's what motivates me. To do these things which seem to be difficult to achieve, right? And then just go out there and ask the question that why do people think that it's difficult to achieve? Let's just figure out the easy way of doing this. We are smart people, right? And go ahead and do this. And I don't want to take more time, and then I will give it back to you. But just in terms of my business motivations, because that's also important since you put that at the introduction. My business motivation is purely to make money to be able to sustain the social work that I do. It's literally as simple as that, right? I think it's a challenge that everyone who's working for society ends up facing, where we have to make compromises in different ways because we need to find ways to either fund ourselves or to fund the people who are willing to work with us. Because putting our own lives at a standstill in that sense from a financial standpoint may still be okay, but not the lives of those who work with us. Because a lot of people are not as privileged as I am, and I recognize how privileged I am, right? I think that's the other thing that I do. And with that privilege, we know that we need to make money. So the motivation for business is clearly to make that money to allow us to do these things that we do.
That was very modest of you to say that, you do not do extraordinary things. And, very honestly, the path is out there. As you said, it's something quite simple, but somebody has got to walk the path. Somebody has got to take time out to walk the path and to effectively manage and create the capacity building exercise that you were talking about in terms of, to meet those goals. Sanjoy, there are a couple of questions for you on the chat. I wonder whether you got a chance to read them. Or I'll just read them out for you. It is pretty much looking at the Bhopal gas tragedy.
So I read the first one. I've just seen it.
So in fact, could you tell us a bit more about the Bhopal gas tragedy, and what are your views on it in terms of, was the tragedy the act itself, which the government took it upon itself to get relief for everybody, to remove the local suits that were filed by the people, or was there more to it? Was there a cover-up? And how did you really meet those challenges?
And the fact of the matter is that plant should not have been located there. M.N. Butch, who was the commissioner of Bhopal, I think that was his position, had given a written recommendation that the plant would be located in a place which was densely populated, and with the wind blowing in a particular direction, it could be dangerous. Exactly what happened. You had a plant which was in the process of actually being taken down and shipped to Brazil, because it was in such, nobody else wanted it, to another Union Carbide facility. And what was called the gas scrubber was never working. And people, both in the plant and around it, there's a place called JP Nagar right opposite, would say that they would get a sense that things were not right if they got a bad smell coming from the plant. So I think that it's really critical to understand that at that time, people weren't really serious about issues like industrial health issues. That was in the 80s, 84 December. And that one incident, that one industrial disaster killed more people than all the previous industrial disasters in the world put together. That's the scale of the whole thing. And that's why it is a landmark for the world, not just for us. And Union Carbide had it coming to it because it said in a press conference, one of their public relations persons said, it can't happen here, like in the United States. Exactly 2 months after that, it did happen in Institute, West Virginia, where there was a leak. The entire neighborhood was evacuated. Nobody died, but about 100 people went to hospital. And do you know, in that place, as in Bhopal, the people who suffered were the underprivileged and poor. In the US, it was people of color. And in JP Nagar, it was people who were poor from different parts of the country who had come to eke a livelihood out in Bhopal. So there were a lot of, shall I say, involvements of all sides, and I think to put a value on an individual's life, whether it's in India or anywhere else, is a very highly political issue, and we shouldn't really get into that. But I think that Bhopal gave a clear connect with the what do you call the issue of the polluter, that the polluter must pay. And that was a principle that came into law, as well as which wasn't even a law in this country. It came a year or two of the Bhopal disaster. So there are several things that happened, but many things still don't happen. You look at this, because it's not just pollution, it is clean air. We do not have a right to clean air. And nowhere in the world is there a right to clean air. We must have a right to clean air in this country and other countries. Otherwise, you have these disasters where something like the 15 of the top polluted cities of the world are in the NCR region or in South Asia. Dhaka is polluted, the Bombay, Pune, the NCR of Delhi. So we need very strong, not just rigorous implementation of law and judicial pronouncements, but you need people to be really involved in this. As the previous speaker was saying, unless you involve people, things don't work. And the last point I want to say is that you need to develop alternatives. Like, for instance, pollution is not just about people burning wood or, people at a particular income level don't have choices, unless they have clean energy supplied to them. But you have stubble burning in the Punjab, Haryana, and UP. There are alternatives to mulching. There are alternatives that can be done. It's been done in Delhi by closing down a thermal power plant. You can do that. You've got clean energy for public transport in Delhi. Now, that is quite something. It's not a small step. And you've got old vehicles have been decommissioned. These are all steps, may not be adequate, but there have been. I wouldn't agree with somebody who said nothing has been done. There have been steps, and they need to be expanded on a larger scale to be really effective. The point about the event was highly politicized. What challenges did you face while dealing with the authorities? I faced challenge. I was at one time I was almost locked up for going into the Union Carbide plant when it was shut down, and the head of the ICMR, I think it's the ICMR, one of those investigating teams said, "What are you doing here? You're not supposed to be here." Well, I said the gate was open. I walked in. What was the problem? So anyway, we got a lot of information from government sources. There were good people in government who wanted to get the information out, and that was very important. Even without the right to information, I always say that if you're a good journalist, you're an investigative journalist, you can get a lot of data from government that they are willing to share for the public good. The question about the infrastructure in the Northeast stem from geographical and terrain-based issues. I think both are there. You know, there is something called, there was this wonderful commission, there are commissions and committees galore, but there's called the Shukla Commission many years ago, which had identified 4 gaps in the Northeast, and I'll add a 5th. The first was a governance gap. The second was a communications gap and connectivity gap. The third was related to lack of understanding. And I would say the fourth it said was a trust gap, you know, between communities, between the people, the region and Delhi and the rest of the country. And I would say a 5th is an integrity gap. You know, that there is accountability is not often demanded or sought. Fiscal accountability and accountability in terms of governance. And I think that is really very critical, that you must demand accountability of people, even in difficult times. What we find in many of the militant groups, there have been connections in the past with governments and political parties. So everything has been connected. And the othering of people from the Northeast, well, I think there are what you call outsiders and insiders even within the Northeast. You know, if you go from one place to another, you're seen as an outsider, even you're from the region. So that is not necessarily the answer. But as far as othering is concerned in the rest of the country, even during the coronavirus time, people were called chinky, people were spat upon, people were called China, just because they happen to look different, you know. And this ethnic othering, this ethnic racial discrimination, which happens is as bad as caste discrimination, I would say. You have a commission for scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, commission for scheduled castes, you have a commission also for scheduled tribes. So I think atrocities on both sides are, you know, things that must be denounced, opposed, resisted, and changed. And I think there's a lot of learning that's happened really as far as the rest of the country is concerned, because now, if you look, even in, I don't know what's in Xavier's, but I'm sure there are students from the Northeast there. But if you look across Delhi, across Pune, even a small place like Miraj, you'll go to Nagpur, you'll find students, teachers, entrepreneurs, workers in Kerala who travel from the plains of Assam, from places like Nelly. They're turning up in Thrissur. They're working there because there is an out-migration that is engaging with the idea of India. It's not embracing it, perhaps not as Delhi would want, but there is engagement, and engagement is the first step to bridge building and further positive steps. I'll stop there because I think I don't want to take up more time.
Thank you, Sanjay. And can I seek the indulgence of Naveen and Ramit? Sanjay has to leave. Can I just ask him one more question, which he can answer in about a minute, and then put questions to you? Naveen, is that okay?
No, absolutely, absolutely. It's wonderful hearing Sanjoy. Please, as much as
Sanjay,
we can get out of him.
Okay. So, Sanjay, just one last question. If you could just address to the youngsters who are listening to this. How is it different? How is the India different for the journalists of the 1980s and the journalists of the 2020s? You've had a large expanse of time, and you've seen the geographical, the social, the political, the economic landscape change of this country. So how do you really, how do you see it? Just a minute's advice to the youngsters, it would be invaluable.
I'll tell you something. I still jog, which I did 30 years ago. I'm still jogging, okay? And I hope to jog till the end of days. In fact, I've just come back from a walk in the forest above my house, so that's wonderful. The world of journalism has changed in the sense that there used to be both benchmarks as well as people who would filter, stories. And you would be also very, very grounded in what you did and what you wrote and what you said and what you thought through before putting pen to paper, or rather the typewriter or the laptop, putting in and processing it. Here you don't have editors now. You don't have people who are actually filtering what is being written. You have people who call themselves citizen journalists. Well, I really don't think, I think that many journalists are perhaps not functioning as citizens. Many citizens are being journalists, and I don't know if that's really a great combination. But what I do say is that standards have really fallen in terms of quality journalism, in terms of really asking searching questions. For instance, I see an article by my friend and colleague, former editor Kalpana Sharma, in the News Laundry saying, why is the national media, the so-called national media, silent on these issues? Why aren't they asking the tough questions about why is this pandemic spreading suddenly so rapidly and why are hospitals running out of oxygen and medicines? Those are the questions to ask. And who's asking them now? The other thing that you didn't have at the time, what you have today is called fake news. Fake news is really what in the older times would be called rumors, unverified situations. So gossip, hearsay. And now there is no filter for fake news. It's only something that draws the attention and threatens Google or Google Baba or some of these big guys. Then they say, okay, there is a problem here, we will check it. But there should be more emphasis given to fact checks. And I think one of the best ways of doing it is if more journalists use the Right to Information Act, which is used by something like 7 to 8 million Indians every year. And that is a huge generation of information, of data. And it's not just about promotions, who got promoted and not. People get data. And as a result of that, many people have risked their lives and have been killed. In fact, in the past, since the RTI law became an act, and the RTI law was passed, 2005, more than 80 RTI activists have been killed, including several in the past year alone. So I think it's important to have these filters. It's important to do fact checking really more rigorously. And that's been where we've been sloppy, frankly. And that's where, because it's so easy to get information from the net. How many, for instance, if you look at the main news channels now, you will see that most of their shows are shows, no? They don't have people on the ground reporting. That's because the economy has shrunk, they're hit, they've laid off journalists. Nobody's talking about the hundreds of journalists who've been sacked. Their rights are completely given the way by. So these are important things to also look at.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Sanjay. Thank you. That was very, very good. In fact,
and please excuse me, Mr. Daswani and Ramit and Naveen and George and others, for leaving you. I have other things to get to. Unfortunately, I'm on vacation, so I'm very happy to have joined you, and it's great to. And I wish all the best to the students and the panelists and the faculty at Ncdhr, which is a wonderful college in Bombay. Such a wonderful campus, such good people. I've been there a few times, spoken there. So thank you for doing this and for that lovely film.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Bye.
Thank you. Naveen, so, this question is for you. And you heard what, Sanjoy was saying in terms of how reporting has changed, fake news has changed, journalism has changed. So how do you find this when you're working for the underprivileged? Do you find that media is sometimes helping you? You think media is sometimes letting you down? Would you want them to do more? Because you are actually communicating information to the person who is uninformed. I mean, you are informed, you have a law background, you're informed, and you are communicating. So do you think the media or the surrounding synergy is more positive now than what it was several years back? This is your experience from on the ground.
All right. So, yeah, Professor. So, I mean, the situation is, I'll say, pathetic right now. I'll use the term pathetic. Simple. It's simple as it is. I'll quote the incident of the recent Hathras incident itself. I mean, how the media actually showed it, how it was supposed to be a survivor-centric incident, how it was supposed to be a survivor-centric news, how they gave a whole Hindutva Bhat Bhagwa version to the whole news. They're trying to defame the UP chief minister. So now it's like if you want to protest against something which used to be a right, which is actually a right, which is a fundamental right, that has become a crime. You cannot protest. Simple. If you protest and if it goes into the media, there is a separate and a different version of fake news developing. On the other hand, for us, it is an eye opener also. I'll quote the Hathras incident. There are many other incidents which I wanted to quote, but because all of us know the Hathras incident, what actually happened over there. So I would quote that when we went to the field and when we were talking to the survivors themselves, the mother and the brother, they just said something. And they said that after the incident and after the harassment of the police, it was the media who harassed them the most. It was the media who harassed them the most. And because of that, they have stopped responding to the people who were actually concerned about them. For us also, it was so difficult to talk to them. The first question they asked like, "आप अगर मीडिया से हैं तो चले जाइए, हमें और दर्द नहीं सहना." So such is the situation. And then similarly, I'll also talk about another recent incident that happened in Simdega. So I don't know whether you have heard about Badayu incident or not. You must have seen the movie Article 15. So that was based on an incident wherein 2 Dalit girls were raped and they were hanged. At that point of time, it was majorly in the news. And it was claimed that they were Dalits in the news itself. And it was claimed that they have been victimized and their families being victimized. Now, a year back, 2 Adivasi girls, they were raped, they were hanged in Simdega. Simdega is a small district in Jharkhand. And we ourselves we also did a fact finding on the case. And imagine it took us 2 years to ensure that the FIR is lost. It took us 2 years to ensure that the FIR is lost. And this is, imagine, the first step. We wanted to take the help of the media in every possible manner. It was media which showed that they committed suicide because they were homosexuals. And they couldn't show their face to the world. It were we who went to the field along with other lawyers, other social activists who we were like literally toiling on the field, and then we were asking everyone what actually happened. We went to the families, we went to the police department, we were thrashed over there, and then we kept giving exact information to the media. Kindly quote this, kindly quote this. They were like, no, we cannot quote this because the government has denied to intervene in the matter. After an year, the government changed, and fortunately for us, they took the matter into cognizance, and they themselves said that the media reports were also false, and we will ensure that the FIR is lost. And FIR was lodged then after 2 years, and still imagine it's 1.5 years and the charge sheet is not filed. Accordingly, legally, they're supposed to file a charge sheet within 60 days. It's 1.5 years. The charge sheet is still not filed. The accused is still out of the police custody. They have not caught her, and the accused is living just next to the village of the survivors. So these are 2 incidents which I wanted to quote, and it's become so difficult for us. Earlier, we used to use media as our help. Basically, it used to come for rescue also sometimes. They used to accompany us in the rescues, in the fact findings. But now the situation is like they show you the exact other version. And that's I always request the youth, especially the youth, that just realize certain things, read, reanalyze, and then respond. And these are certain things, especially 4 Rs, which I believe in, which we need to be aware of at this point of time, while we have a fake media, fake news world going on. That's it, Professor Kishu.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, that is, I mean, a very, very, very different perspective. But, you know, sometimes maybe it is this very same media that also manages to highlight things which we otherwise would not have known, you know, how we in mainstream or from urban areas wouldn't really have known. There are some questions on the chat for you, Naveen. Would you like to just mull over them a bit? In the interim, I could just ask a couple of questions to Ramit. yes, maybe I'll come back to you. You could answer those questions that have been put up on chat.
All right.
Yeah. Ramit, so now you gave us a very, very harmonious picture of a synergy wherein you have the resources, you have the information, you have the knowledge, you have the manpower, and you went out and solved a very, very critical, crucial problem in terms of helping people out and removing some obstacles, either in price point or in dealing with a militant issue. Now, you think where can we do better in this country? This entire perspective is so really what we are really talking of three different Indias. Possibly Sanjoy's India is different from Naveen's India, is different from your India. So where can we get a kind of a collective synergy, you think, to where these verticals kind of meet and they assist each other? Now, maybe a small little bait I could throw you here is the farm laws, wherein despite having the knowledge, wherewithal, the parliamentary system, but still dissent seems to be the only option. So how do you think we can create a positive outcome of this?
It all boils down to communication, right? And I know you're a great proponent of communication as well, right? And the utility that can have in solving any sort of conflict that arises, right? And it's the same thing but disharmony, right? When you're looking at an India today, when we're talking about, and again, Naveen was very rightly pointed out the impact of media and the way that things are moving around us. And then when you also spoke about the fact that media perhaps also then ends up highlighting certain issues. My question is, why is this even a question in the first place, right? Because we are relying on the media to be able to communicate with people. That's the power we have given them, right? But if we were communicating with each other, then that particular power that we are seeking to use would become irrelevant, in my opinion, right? And I'm sorry, it's probably a very an idea and a thought which many people will not agree with, right? Because apparently we don't have the time to talk to each other these days, and I think that really is the biggest challenge. Today, why is it that Sanjoy's India, Naveen's India, and my India are different? It's because the three of us are not talking to each other. We have not had either the opportunity or the time or just the pace of our lives are so fast that we've not been able to see these clearly. And that, of course, there are many reasons why our life is as fast as it is. But what we need to do, I think, in a nutshell, is to communicate better with all of us. Because if we did that, then automatically you will see that our Indias, all these various different Indias will come together. They will still remain different. Coming together does not mean that they will stop being different. They will be different, but we will have a better understanding of all of this, right? Where then, as I said earlier to you as well, in terms of all the work that we do, then you talk, then you understand reason, you understand rationale, and then you are in a position to be able to move forward. And each and every one of us can do that, only if we slow down and actually start having conversation. Okay.
So you mean remove the middleman. Remove the middleman.
Absolutely, 110%, right? Or at least question the middleman, right? Or at least then try and form your own opinion at the very least. If you may allow me a few minutes, I'll give you a few examples, right, of miscommunication in that sense,
please.
Right?
Yes.
And things that I've been lambasted for in the past, right? And I'll give an example. I'll start off with reservation, right? And I'll start off with SC, Dalit. We've spoken a lot about that. One statement that I made, not recently, a few years ago, was that if we have such a major problem with SCs and STs getting reservation, right? And Naveen, please tell me what you think about what I'm saying once I'm done, perhaps. What if we increase the pass percentage of the medical schools and law schools and so on and so forth, right? Now people started saying, oh, you're anti-Dalit, you're anti-SC, ST, how can you increase the pass percentage and so on and so forth, right? And they didn't wait for me to explain to them what I was saying. What I was trying to say effectively, and then there's people who of course understood that because they engaged with me and had a conversation with me, right? What I was saying is that you are telling me that today an SC or ST who comes into a college through reservation is not good enough, right? That's what you're telling me. You're telling me that I will not go to a doctor who is a Dalit or who is a Chamar. I will not go to that doctor because ye to reservation se ghusa tha. He entered into college through reservation, right? I will go to the general category physician. What we fail to recognize in this entire thing is that the pass percentage in college was still the same for them. They may have entered differently, but they have passed out in the same manner, right? So if you have a problem with the SC/ST doctor who has got a 45% pass mark, right? Why do you not have a problem with the general doctor, general category doctor who's got a 40% pass mark, who actually was lower than the SC/ST? So if you have a problem with the quality doctors, increase the pass percentage to 80%. When will you be satisfied? Be satisfied at a point, right? Be satisfied that, okay, at this point of pass percentage, I agree that you're a good doctor, right? Perhaps do that. And then if you're talking about an equal playing field, don't talk about not having reservation, because again, that has so many other connotations. Talk to me about what are you actually worrying about? What is the differential, right? Don't create an artificial differential where a 40% general category physician is better than a 45 or 60% SC/ST category physician, right? That was one. Simply, when you hear it, perhaps you also would have thought that what is Ramit saying? Why, like, is he an anti-SC/ST, right? Similarly, if you talk about the LGBTQI, right, 377 judgment, I would say it openly in as many words. I am absolutely against that judgment, right? And I said it again in a public forum where again I was lambasted that I have a problem with LGBTQ, right? Until the time when I actually started having a conversation and said that no, I'm absolutely no problem with the LGBTQ community. But what you have to recognize is that what has that judgment done? It has effectively legalized sodomy, right? Who is the biggest person who gets impacted by sodomy? Nobody has an answer. I don't know whether people on this call would have an answer either. The biggest people who get impacted by sodomy are women in rural India who get raped every single day of their lives. And I'm probably going to be a bit gruesome, so please pardon me, but it's important to get gruesome in these things. They are pleading to be sodomized prior to the 377 law because that's the only way they get to go to the police officer. Because marital rape in our country is not a crime, right? So there are women who are getting raped every single day, hoping that their husband brutalizes them and sodomizes them so that they can go to the police officer and actually get some justice. But what the 377 law has done, and again, you're a lawyer, Kishu, you may disagree with me, many others have, right? Saying that, no, it's not done this. But my point is, who's going to tell that to that woman and who's going to tell that to that cop? Because the cop is now saying, ki, Arey, ghar ja wapis. Go back to your home. It's not a crime anymore, right? That woman is not going to go to the Supreme Court and fight against this. So when you balance these two, that the rights of the LGBTQ, who I absolutely agree must have those rights, but the impact of the 377 judgment on all these rural women who do not have a recourse anymore, what are you going to say? Are you going to say that the 377 judgment was brilliant, or are you going to say that let's fight for these rights as well? And without that, it's so incomplete, right? Anyway, so to answer your basic question, it's this inability of us to see beyond just a single statement and relying on this single statement, saying that, oh, XYZ has said this is where we must go. Arey, look beyond, ask more questions, have more conversation. Let it not be a 10-minute conversation. Let it be a 10-hour conversation. Where is this time going, right? Don't watch that other movie. Don't go and spend time with your friends. So just have this conversation. And at least, if not others, at least the privileged must. And that's what I keep coming back to privilege, right? I keep saying this, that the privileged must, right? But anyway, communication, that's really the answer.
That's a very valid point, Ramit, because, things in life are not black and white, like most things in life, they're shades of gray, and and answers are not very easy there. Naveen, you read those questions. Yeah, and maybe, I got a cue from the organizer that we should be winding up in about 10 minutes. So, Naveen, while you answer those questions, one very nice question I found there is, what can we do? What can we do? See, somehow the cause of the SC/ST or the Dalits is pretty much championed by the Dalit or the SC/ST. So what can other members of civil society do, to assist and reach out? I think that was one of the questions asked. And I think that's a very valid question. And to the listeners to this program, you can probably tell them that, what do you expect from us? How to create a better world?
That's actually difficult, but I think the most interesting question I've come across since I've been working on this issue. I'll just go one by one, Professor Kishu.
Yeah.
So I'll just start with the first question itself, which talks about what is the role of Ncdhr basically. So basically, our role in the field is at the 4 level. First one is the basic thing, which we think is the most important thing, which we all need to do. Also answering your question, Professor Kishu, what we all need to do is to make yourself aware before you go to the community. Whether you know the rights, whether you analyze your rights and the Dalit Adivasi rights as something which is like different, or whether you analyze them as something which is same, which is similar. The moment you'll start analyzing them as something which is similar, which have been enshrined in the constitution, which have been enshrined in the fundamental rights, that will be the point when you'll be able to work for them, actually. That will be the point where you are able to understand that actually, okay, now, because the rights are similar, but only the situation is different, right? Point one. Secondly, what we work upon is, after awareness, we we make the community aware about their rights. Secondly, we work on the capacity building. We identify the loopholes, we identify the areas, we identify the survivors, we identify the people, we identify the stakeholders, we identify what the problem, where and what exactly the problem is, and then we make them aware of their rights. Then we make them aware of what the procedure is, and so we teach them. I won't use the word teach them. We'll tell them about 3 different important factors. First is skills, second is perspective, and the third is knowledge. And this is a triangle. This is the golden triangle, which we think is something which can bring changes: skill, perspective, and knowledge. And we train them accordingly, the community. Third, and the most important thing is, see, me sitting work. I'm sorry if someone is from a national university over here. I am a graduate. I'm a postgraduate from a national university. I have access to certain rights which people don't have. I have access to knowledge which people don't have.
I mean, we've lost you for a bit.
Hello?
I think we can hear him, Kishu. Naveen, I think you can carry on.
I think Professor Kishu's, have missed him, right? Okay. So basically, what we need to analyze is, okay, what I was talking about, I'm sorry. Yeah, the change agent. So me sitting over here in Delhi in an AC chamber, working in an AC office, I cannot bring major change. What I can only do is, I can only talk to the people. But we need change agent from the society. We need change agent from the community. And that is very important. We need to have stories from the community. We need to have stories from the marginalized section of the society. We need them to come up. We need someone to come up. We need a sister of our Hathras survivor to come up. We need brother of Hathras survivors to come up and talk about their rights, claim their rights. We need someone from Simdega, from the village which people people don't even know about. We need someone to come up and advocate for their own rights. So that is something which is very important. We need change agents, and we cannot be change agents unless and until we are the survivors. The change agent will be the community people, the survivor themselves, because they have the perspective. They just need some knowledge. They just need to build up on certain skills, and they will be the change agent, will come up with change itself. Then finally answering the question, your question, Professor Kishu, and also the question mentioned in the chat box. That is what we can do. I think the first part I've already responded, that we need to consider the rights of Dalits and the rights of the people, the dominant caste, the general caste, as equal. We need to understand that both have equal rights, but there are issues with accessibility. There are issues with whether people are able to understand their issues or not. There are issues with the perspective. So the perspective building is something which we need to do, and the perspective building forms the base of the work which we want to do for the Dalits and Adivasis. And that would only come after reading a lot of stuff, plus talking to the survivors, understanding them, talking to the community people, understanding them, and then analyzing the situation itself at the grassroots. So that's all.
Great, Naveen, thank you. You know, what you told us, I found a lot of echo in what Ramit was saying. That is information, inquiry, communication, and knowledge. You see, that ultimately would be the kind of the harmonious way to go about resolving most issues. Thank you, Naveen, for that wonderful insight. Ramit, we would close this session with the last question to you. And I see the question on the chat box is pretty much, and I don't think what you're doing is CSR. Your initiative is very, very different. Probably CSR is the softer, milder option to take up. Or could you just throw some light to the audience on what you're doing and CSR? Or is CSR the easy way out? Push the button and move on. Maybe you could just close with those comments.
This is probably the worst question to ask me if you want to end on time, right? But I will try my best to try and keep it very, very short because I do know that we're running out of time. But for me, CSR, and you put it very correctly, I think CSR is an easy way out, right? CSR, when you heard Sanjoy talk about the Bhopal gas tragedy, right? You have to recognize the fact that one of the reasons why all of these, whether it's something like the Bhopal gas strategy, or whether it's BP, whether it's issues of OxyContin and all of that, you look at all of these global major issues caused by corporates. CSR is used as a branding exercise by them to get out of these messes, right? And you've seen it day in, day out, and I don't mince my words on this at all, right? I've seen the kind of work that CSR is doing in the Northeast of India as well, because we've started work there as well. I've seen it all across the country, really. It's ridiculous, and I will use that word. And apologies, I don't want anyone to get into trouble in terms of the organizers, but I will try and control myself. But yes, the CSR, broadly speaking, I think is a tool that the corporate world has created in order to be able to spend money on things that they ought to spend on in any case. And which is where I began with Kishu, saying that I don't like the word social work, right? So of course, corporate social responsibility says corporate social responsibility. I don't understand the delta between corporate and social, right? And CSR is something that ends up promoting that at the end of the day, right? What we're doing, I really hope no one calls it CSR, right? Because from our perspective, I think literally every single piece, every single rupee that we earn goes into the societal rate, right? So CSR defines it at 2%. Again, we don't understand that concept or that logic, right, behind that. It's not the middle ground. So to Sai, CSR is not the middle ground. I think there's a lot more that all of you students, all of us humans, Indians, however you'd like to collectively call yourself as a group, right, can do as compared to CSR, because you can actually reach out to the ground and speak with human beings as human beings. Corporates will always speak to human beings as corporates, right? That is the biggest delta. What Naveen spoke about and all the wonderful work that he's doing is because he's going on the ground and talking to people, right? He's being able to see, अपनी आँखों से देख रहा है वो कि उसको क्या ज़रूरत है और क्या करना है, right? And you can't expect in corporate to do that. The entire law, and again, if you talk about the law issue, again, you would know that better than me. The law is structured to be a conformist law, right? That is what it's structured to be. And anything that's structured to be a conformist law becomes a checklist which gets ticked off, right? That's literally what ends up happening. Is the result. We've seen it all over, right? So yeah, CSR is, for me, like if anyone is listening into this call who is considering to see that CSR may actually be a solution to us, like increase the 2% to 4% is something that I've been hearing a lot in the ministries and a lot of representations going out to the government. I just feel that it's going to be even more counterproductive.
Okay, that was wonderful. I mean, you just cracked up CSR completely.
Sorry, I apologize.
You just broke it outside completely. Well, thank you. I think that's a great insight for the audience today on what we assume CSR is and what CSR actually is. But what we take away from this entire discussion today is the power of communication, the power to speak, and I think that's been wonderfully achieved by hearing the panelists today. I'm sure the student audience has hugely benefited from getting your insights and perspectives into the different verticals that you are serving to this country. I will now just hand it over to Sai, who's a student organizer, to take it from here.
on behalf of the entire DIRS team. I would like to thank each and every one of our speakers, including Mr. Sanjay Hazarika, even though he could not stay with us until the very end, but we will definitely convey our gratitude to him, as well as to Mr. Naveen Gautam and to Mr. Ramit Singh for being here, for contributing, for sharing some of the valuable time and insights. I'm sure these insights are going to stay with us. We have quite a lot of food for thought actually by the end of this session. So I'm deeply grateful to all of you for joining us. I would also like to thank Professor Kishu Daswani for agreeing to moderate this session, despite I'm aware that he had quite a tight schedule today. And he agreed to hop into this meeting although he had another session to attend just a little before this. But thank you so much, sir, for being here and directing this conversation. I would like to thank also Dr. Fadakir D'Souza, the director of St. Xavier's College and the director of the Department of Interreligious Studies, for making this opportunity available to us, for giving us the chance to organize this Harmony seminar. I must remind you that this is the final day of the Harmony seminar, and we are extremely proud to have put all of this together and seen it become quite a success, because all of us definitely will have a lot to take away from each of the sessions. Next, I would like to thank our principal, Dr. Rajendra Shinde, for yet again allowing us this opportunity and also being present here for all 3 sessions. I am aware that he too has quite a busy schedule, and despite that, he joined us. It was really encouraging to have you, sir. I would also like to thank our faculty coordinators, Professor Radha Kumar and Professor Radhika Rani, for guiding us throughout this journey, and my fellow teammates, the DIRS students, the DIRS volunteers, all those who contributed to the documentary, for doing an excellent job, for working with us throughout relentlessly and making this happen. Last but not the least, each and every member of the audience for being here and also putting up your questions and participating. I would like to announce that this was not only the last session of the Harmony seminar, but also the last session conducted by the student team of 2020-21. So we are extremely, I am really not able to put this out properly, because it's a moment when we have quite a lot of mixed feelings. It's a moment of pride, it's a moment of happiness, and also that I think all of us are also a little bit sad that we won't get to organize such events and also engage in the learning process that goes on at the back end. Nevertheless, we would like to know your feedback on this session. So we're putting up the feedback link. We've also released our DIRS student journal titled After the Storm just yesterday, and the link will also be put up. Do follow us on all our social media handles and stay tuned to find out what further initiatives even the next student team is coming up with. So yes, thank you so much. And I would like to say that the event has formally ended, but if anybody would like to unmute themselves